How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf, Daf 20 of Masechta BavaBasra, friends. Alright, here's the Dilio. Alright, here's the Dilio. It's not such a difficult Daf, I don't think, but it's like Tuma and Tara, I guess, but not insanely difficult. Tuma and Tara, I don't know, whatever. It is what it is. And then we get to another Mishnah. I hope that we're going to do I plan to do the next Mishnah as well. So, shall we? Alright. Okay, so we're starting on, we still have a bunch of Yud Testament Beis to do, but the thing is that there wasn't really a place to stop until like Chaf Amud Beis. So, I'm just going to do it all. Here we go. Okay. We are on Daf Yud Tes Amud Beis, about 15-20 lines from the bottom of the Daf. The middle of the line says, Amar Reb Tuvi bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. Yeah? Got it? Okay. Amar Reb Tuvi bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. Rokik, wow. All of a sudden, like my throat's dry. Rokik enu mima eit becholin. Do-do-do-do, da-da-da-da, do-do-do-do, da-da-da-da-do-do-do. Okay. Who can tell me what this is talking about? Well, tumas hameis, tumas oil. So if you have like two rooms, one next to each other, room Reuven and room Shimon. So there's a mace in room Reuven. I like that double R, room Reuven. There's a mace in room Reuven. And then room Shimon is right next door. And so the halacha is that if there is a poseach tefach, if there is a opening, I guess 1 tefach by 1 tefach, so then the tumas ha'oil will spread into room Shimon. But if there is not such a large space, if there's not a space, a tefach by a tefach, if it's less than that, so then the tumas ha'oil will be contained into room Reuven. Now, what if you have an opening that's a tefach by a tefach, but there's epis in the opening? So, for example, a piece of dough in the opening. So now, there's a piece of dough there. Now it's slightly less than a tefach by a tefach. The shaila is, would that be significant to stop the tumas ha'oil? What do you think? What do you think? So again, Amr Tuvi bar Kisna, Amr Shmuel, Rokik Eino Memait. Oh, Chaver, by the way, I was thinking, why was I thinking this? Probably just because I'm always thinking this? I don't know. Reb Hillel, I saw you earlier today. I saw you in the park. But it was not the park right outside my house. It was the park, Ganatut. It was the one a little bit closer to the shuk. I was wondering if maybe, did you intentionally sit in that park and not in the park by my house because you thought maybe I was recording Babylon Talmud, or you didn't want my crazy neighbor to yell at you? I was wondering if listening to Babylon Talmud over the years has caused kind of scared you away from the park outside my house. So Amar Tuvi by Kisna Amar Shmuel Rokik Enu Memayit B'Cholon. So if you have like a thin piece of dough, that is not going to help keep out the tumah. Ma'irya Rokik. Why do we mention a thin piece of dough? Afilu Ove, even if it was thick, nami. Even if it was thick, also it wouldn't make a chatzitza. Lo miboyo kamer, it's saying not only this, but even that. Lo miboyo ove, no, certainly a thick piece of dough. Kevan de echze lei, since it is fit for him. Like mistama is going to take it, right? It's a piece of dough. So the point is that he's gonna remove it. He's gonna take it away. He's gonna take it out of there. It's not there permanently. It's not on the window for the long term. So lo mevatu lei. So it would not keep out the tumah. Rokik dimamis, but a thin piece of dough, which is disgusting, just kind of sitting there, a thin piece of dough sitting there on that opening where there's like tumas hameis, ema batuli mevatule. So I would say that maybe, forget it, nobody wants it, leave it there, it should make a chatzitza, kamash malon. We're saying even the rakik does not make a chatzitza. Chaver, so there's a super important point here that needs to be clarified, because it's going to be important for the hemshich of the daf, for the continuation of the daf. And that is, you see what's going on here is that so you have room Ruvain and room Shimon, and between them there is this opening the size of a tefach. Now there's something in that opening that makes that opening less than a tefach by a tefach. But here's the important yesod, is that according to Shmuel, if that's something that's smallening the opening is something that will be removed, well then it's not going to help keep out the tumah. And therefore we're saying that since this piece of dough, even though it's going to get disgusting, still the chiddush is that even though this piece of dough can still be disgusting, the assumption is that it will be removed from there, and therefore it does not make a chatzitza. To make a chatzitza, to keep out the tumah, it would have to be something that's there permanently. Okay, where am I? Okay, but now why are we saying that the reason why it fails to keep out the tumah is because it's something that will be removed? Forget about it. Even if it was something that was there for for the long term, it's food, and there's obviously a concept of tumas ochlin. Food can become tummy, and something that it itself can become tummy is not going to keep out tumah. You need something that is going to block the tumah. The food is just going to become tummy itself and perpetuate the tumah. So again, learn that these doughs are not going to make a chatzitza because they're food. And food is makabel tumah. And anything that's able to be makabel tumah doesn't keep the tumah out, doesn't separate from the tumah. Shenilash bimei peris. Well, we're talking about dough that was kneaded with fruit juice, and that is why I guess fruit juice is not one of the liquids that would transfer make something muksher likabel tumah. Okay, fine. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Shmuel. Kupa mileo teven. If you have a container, I guess, filled with straw, v'chavas milei grogris, or a barrel filled with figs. Okay, so you have a container that's filled with straw, a barrel that's filled with figs. Hamunachim b'cholon, and they are in this window between room Ruvain and room Shimon. Roin kol she'ilu yinotlu v'yecholin teven v'grogris lamod b'fnei atzmon chotzitzin v'emlav ein chotzitzin. You hear this? So you have room Ruvain and you have room Shimon. And there's a mace in room Ruvain. And there's an opening between room Ruvain and room Shimon. And therefore, the tumasa oil will extend, will travel, extend to room Shimon. But in this opening, there is a barrel. And in this barrel, there is straw or figs. So now we say, well, the barrel itself doesn't make a chatzitza because it can become tummy. The Gemara is going to ask why we assume that it will become tummy, but let's assume for now it will become tummy. So the barrel itself is not going to make a chatzitza because the barrel itself can itself become tummy, so it can't make a chatzitza. But inside of the barrel, you have straw, you have figs, and assuming that they did not come in contact with water, they're not mukhshar l'kabel tumah, so they will be able to make a chatzitza from the tumah. However, it depends. if we can remove the barrel and the contents of the barrel, the straw, the figs, would be able to retain their structural integrity, they'd be able to remain in place and block the tumah from spreading, so then they will block the tumah from spreading. But if by removing the barrel they would kind of just fall over, well then they're dependent on the barrel, and the barrel is not can't make a chatzitza, so neither can they. So again, let's read this again. Meisver v'kasha kupa milea tevin. If you have some kind of a container filled with straw, v'chavas milea grogris, or a barrel filled with figs. Now, the barrel itself, or the container itself, won't make a chatzitza, but hamarachim b'cholin, they're in this opening. Roin kol she'ilu yinotlu, that so we consider that if you will remove, if you can somehow cut away the barrel, v'yecholin tevin v'grogris lamod b'fnei atzman, and the straw or the figs would be able to remain there in place, chotzitzin, well then they will block the tumah from spreading. Ve'im lab, but if they would just kind of like fall over when you remove their container, well then ein chotzitzin, well then the figs or the straw will not make a chotzitza. Now, we just said that, okay, so if we assume that we can remove the container and the figs or the straw will be able to remain in place, so then they would make a chatzitza. So we're basically saying that straw and figs can block out the tumah. But straw and figs are things that would be taken. According to Shmuel, Shmuel said that things that would be removed from their place cannot, block the tumah. And yet we're saying that straw can block the tumah, that figs can block the tumah. These are things that are going to be taken. But Tevin Chazir the Bemto, is he not going to take the straw and feed it to his animal and remove it from the opening between the rooms? Bisaria, well, it's disgusting straw. Chazir Latina, okay, but use disgusting straw to make cement. The isbay or mortar, I don't know, something to for building construction. The isbay kotze, well, there are thorns in it, and it would be very difficult to work with and to put into whatever mortar they're making. Okay, chazi la'asaka. Okay, so if you can't use it for building, you can burn them. So you'll remove it for fuel. The masunta, well, they're moist, they're wet. Chazi le'hesegado, okay, but you can use wet straw for it if it's a big enough fire. So then you can even use the wet straw. Hesegado lo shchiach, yeah, but a big fire isn't so common, and therefore we're talking about straw that you're not going to be taking, and therefore it makes a chatzitza. Grogris, achazulei, and figs, is he not obviously going to take them to eat them? Chebe, by the way, the figs are back in Eretz Yisrael. I just bought my first figs of the season. I made a bracha shechianu, and they were gevaldig. We've been making a lot of shechianus recently, Baruch Hashem, because it's the summer now, so we have all the geschmack fruits, including watermelon. I feel like watermelon has become, unfortunately, controversial these days. But I figured out a workaround. As long as you buy the seedless watermelons, then there's no black. So that's an under ezach. So it's not a political statement if you buy the watermelons without the black seeds in it, and the watermelons I get are without the black seeds. So it's apolitical. So I made a bracha shechianu. The melons in Shuk Machne Yehuda are out of this world. What else? The mangoes are not yet. They're not yet there yet. But recently I got cherries. There's a lot of things here in Eretz Yisrael. They're very, very delicious. All right. Now, I feel like there's noise going on outside. The reason why I feel that is because I feel like I hear it through my noise-canceling headphones. 1 second. Oh, maybe those are cats. Let's go weiter. Where was I again? Wow, Chevra, we're 50 minutes into the daf, and I haven't even started today's daf yet. I did not think that it would take this long. It's like, it just doesn't feel like such a hard daf to me, but it's taking a really long time to get to cover ground here. Interesting. I'm a little surprised. I'll be honest. Fine. Isn't he going to take the figs to eat them? Amar Shmuel Bishe Trifu says Shmuel, we're talking about wormy figs. Nobody wants to eat wormy figs. Tani Rababar Avua. Oh wait, grogers I think are talking dried figs, right? So I got fresh figs. These are dried figs, and let me tell you, dried figs get wormy. I would say whenever I buy dried figs, maybe 25% of them you got to toss. Maybe 20%, 25% you got to toss, I think. Yeah, you really got to check those because you don't want to eat worms. Yuck. Amar Shmuel b'shei trifu, they're all wormy. V'chein tani Rab Barvuak shei trifu, that they are wormy, so therefore you're not going to move them. I mean, what's pshat with the barrel? Right? We said the barrel is not the barrel itself could become tummy. How come? If the opening to the barrel, so assuming that it's an earthenware barrel, now an earthenware vessel does not become tummy from the outside. It only becomes tummy from the inside. So if the opening to the barrel is facing room shimin, well then the barrel itself should be a chatzitza. Because an earthenware vessel does not become tummy from the outside. Ella defuma ligav. Wait, let me just think something for a second. I got everything I need, right? Oh, yep, we're good. Yep, we're definitely good. All right. El defuma ligav. Rather, it's that the opening of the barrel is facing room ruvain where the mace is. Alternatively, l'olam defuma levar, or you could say that the opening is facing room shimin, talking about a metal vessel, and metal is going to transfer tumah. Right? Metal will transfer tumah even from the outside. It's only a klicheres that is not metame migabo. Fine. Meisvei, we have a kasha, and this is be'etzem going to take us. Oh no, not till the end of the daf, but till the next a large way to the next mishnah. Okay. Meisvei, we have a kasha. Asovin shetolshon v'nichon b'cholin. If you have grass that you pluck, you uproot the grass, and you put them in this opening between room Ruven and room Shimon. Or they kind of grew on their own. Although I think somebody gets rid of bachlonis in the windows. Okay. Whatever it is, they're currently in the windows. And cloths that have less than 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos, so they are not mekabel tuma. If you have an animal or a wild animal that they have like a limb or some flesh that is like dangling off of them, yuck, and they're like in this opening, this flesh. Or if you have a bird that is resting in this opening, the ovid kochavim sheyashav b'chalon, or an ovid kochavim who sits in the chalon, uven shmone, or a baby born in the 8th month, or a baby born in the 8th month. The assumption is that a baby born in the 8th month is not viable and is okay, fine. Amunach b'chalon, who's in this opening, ve'amelach, salt, v'klicheres, earthenware, v'sefer Torah, and the Sefer Torah, kula mimatin b'cholin. In all of these examples, they would make a chatzitza. If they're taking up enough space so that it's no longer a tefach by a tefach, well then they will block the tumah from transferring. Aval asheleg, but snow, ve'abarod, and hail, ve'aglid, and was that frost or something? Ve'akfor, and ice, ve'amayim, and water. Kulan ein mimatin b'cholin. They are not going to affect, make the opening smaller. Now, one by one, right? Why are we saying that grass that is in the window would help block the tuma. Aren't you going to take the grass to feed it to your animal? BavaBasra, it's talking about poison grass that would poison the animals, and he's not going to be feeding it to his animals. And when we say that they grew on their own, well, if you have grass that grows on their own on this wall, well then you're going to have to take them down because they're bad for the wall. And therefore, why do they make a chatzitza? They're temporary, right? Shmuel would say that anything that's temporary would not make a chatzitza. Aren't you going to remove these grasses? Amar Rabba bikosel churva. Rabba says, well, we're talking about in that this is a broken down house, an abandoned house, and therefore nobody cares about it. So we're going to leave it there. Rav Papa Amar afilu bikosel yishuv. Rav Papa says it could even be just a wall of a regular house. Beba'in chutz l'shlosha l'chalon. Well, it's talking about where the grasses are coming from outside of 3 tfachim, right? Because we had said that you have to plant at least 3 tfachim away, but they're coming from outside of 3 tfachim and they kind of like rise up to this window. All right. Matlonius, these cloths, chazu le likriya de levusha. Aren't you going to remove these cloths because you can use it to patch a hole in clothing? Bismichta. It's talking about where it's too thick. You're not going to use it as a patch, so you're going to leave it there. Chazulu umno. Yeah, but a bloodletter can use this thick cloth for, bloodletting, I guess, needs bandages or something, for like the blood, like the wound. Beriska, well, it's talking about sackcloth. Beriska, shemba and shalish al shalish, shemba and arba al arba. If we're talking about sackcloth, actually the shear for tuma of a sackcloth is not 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos. It's 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim. 1 second. Yeah, I assume that's right. Arba'a would probably be tfachim. 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, not 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos. So, ke'ein riska. Well, it's not exactly sackcloth. It's similar to sackcloth. It's like thick like sackcloth, but it isn't actually sackcloth. So the shear is 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos, but we don't assume that you're going to take it for any reason. All right. And a limb or flesh that is like hanging off of an animal or a wild animal would make a chatzitza. But isn't the animal it's not gonna stand there forever in that opening? It's gonna go away. Bikshura, well, it's tied there, so it's not going anywhere. Shachit lo, yeah, but aren't you ultimately gonna slaughter it to eat it? Bitmeya, well, it's talking about like a donkey, an animal that's not kosher. Mizabin l'nachri, okay, but can't you sell it to a nachri who would be able to like eat it and slaughter it? Bikhusha. Well, it's talking about where it's very weak and nobody's going to nobody's going to want to buy it. Pasik shadila liklavim. Why don't you just cut off the limb and feed it to dogs? Came the ikat tsar by lechaim lo of it. We can't do that because it's tsar by lechaim. Okay, so basically, I guess it's a tied up animal that isn't going anywhere, and therefore it makes a chatzitza. The of sheshachan b'chalim. And a bird that is resting in this opening. Parach v'azil, isn't it just going to fly away? B'kosher, well, it's tied there. Shachidle, aren't you going to slaughter and eat it? B'tameh, it's a non-kosher bird. Mizabele l'nachri, well, why don't you feed it, why don't you sell it to a nachri to eat? B'kalnisa, it's talking about this little bird that I guess nobody eats. Yavle liyanuka, okay, but these little birds, maybe like a parakeet or something, let the babies, right, let the kids play with them. Bimisarit, well, it's a bird that scratches. Kalnisa lo misarta, but these kalnisa birds don't scratch. Kein kalnisa. Well, it is like a kalnisa. It's not actually a kalnisa because you're right; those don't scratch. But it's a small, scrawny bird that nobody wants to eat, and the kids can play with it, and it doesn't scratch. If an ovekochavim sits in the window, there will be a chatzitza. Also, but isn't he just going to get up and go somewhere eventually? B'chafis, he's tied there. But isn't his friend going to come and untie him and then he'll go some other place? B'mitzora, well, he's a mitzora. Now, obviously we're not talking about tumas tsaras because ovekochavim wouldn't be tummy, but he's a mitzora, he's nonetheless a leper, and I guess nobody wants to go near him. Okay, but maybe a fellow leper will come and let him free. Rather, we're talking about a Ovid Kochavim who is, the king has basically tied him up there and left there, and nobody dare go help him. So he's basically stuck there permanently. Uven Shmona Hamunach B'chalon. Okay. And a baby born in the 8th month of pregnancy that has been left in the window, Aser Ime Direly, but isn't his mother going to come and remove him? B'Shabbos. Well, it's talking about on Shabbos. And his baby, since the baby is born in the 8th month, and it's assumed that the baby is not viable, so it's muktzah, the baby's muktzah. The Tana ben Shmona, that a baby that's born in the 8th month, Arehu Ke'evin, is like we treated practically on Shabbos like a stone. Basel taltalo b'Shabbos, and the baby's muktzah. You can't move the baby on Shabbos. Val imo shocha olav umanikasum pnei asakana. But his mother can lean over him to nurse him out of her danger, right? That if there's too much milk, and it'll be painful for her, so she can kind of relieve that by nursing the baby. But the baby itself is muktzah. Shana, is that like what's like the common what's like the current sort of medical? Oh my, I can't think. But like what's like the contemporary kind of, is that like a thing? Like a baby born in 8th month is like in a higher danger than babies born in other months? Because like the Gemara, like even if the baby's born in the 7th month or the 9th, obviously the 9th month, but even the 7th month, I think, is we don't treat like this. But Dafka the 8th month we assume is like not viable. What's like the contemporary take on that? All right. Melach chazia le okay, so if there's salt there, well, isn't he going to take the salt and make like salad dressing or something? So bimrirta, well, it's bitter salt. Chazia leoris, okay, but use it for tanning hides. Dizba kotze, well, there's thorns in the salt and it doesn't make for a good experience to use in hide tanning. Kim the kasha lekosel shakla, but still, I mean, the salt is going to be bad for the wall. So one way or another, you're going to remove it from there. It's not going to stay there. The asva achaspa, well, it's on a piece of pottery, and therefore it's not going to damage the wall. Chaspa gufa techot, okay, but the pottery itself should make a chatzitza. After all, right? Pottery was on that list of things that make a chatzitza, right? Right? It's one I think we're about to get to, right? Yeah. So delays bashiura. Well, the pottery is too small, and therefore it's not going to make it's not going to count towards a chatzitza. Kidetan cheres kidei litain ben patzim lachaveru. That cheres, in order to make a chatzitza, cheres linin hotzah Shabbos, says Rashi. In terms of being chai for hotzah on Shabbos, cheres would have to be big enough that you would put it between like they would have windows, and they would have these like, I don't know, thingies that they would put in the windows, like wood slats, I guess, that would like allow light in, I guess. And between each one there would be like a shard of pottery. So that's the size that it would have to be. And if it's less than that, then it would be irrelevant. Klecheres, chazile. Now in terms of an earthenware vessel, right, that was on the list of things that would make a chatzitza, but isn't he going to take it to use it? Dimitan, if it's a dirty, disgusting vessel. Chazilu umna, okay, but a bloodletter can use it. Why not? I mean, who cares? It's just blood going in there. Diminakiv, well, it's got a hole in the bottom, so therefore it's not usable for that either, and therefore you're just going to leave it there. Sefer Torah, chazil mikra. Sefer Torah, aren't you obviously going to take it to read from it? Bibali, it's worn out. It's not a kosher Sefer Torah. Valbai geniza, but don't you have to put it in shemus? Don't you have to, bury it, hide it away? Shom te geniza. So just leave it there, and that's where it will remain. All right. Omar Rav says, Rav, Bakol osin mechitza, you can make a wall out of anything, chutz mimelach v'revev u'revav, but you can't make a wall from salt, nor can you make a wall from fat, because these are things that are like going to dissolve. U'shmuel Omar afilu melach. Shmuel says you can make a wall from salt. Omar Papa v'lo pligei, Omar Papa says they don't argue, Abba melach stomus of melach is troknis. It depends on the kind of salt. If you use Sodom salt, that's stark salt, and that you could use that for a wall. But if you use like table salt, yeah, you can't build a wall out of table salt. And now that Rabbah says, and by a mavui, right? We learned Masechta Eruvin. A mavui was like that alleyway that would branch off of Rishus Harabim. So in order to carry in the mavui, you have to make some kind of a hecker between Rishus Harabim and the mavui. That could be done either with a lechi or with a korah. A korah would be like a crossbeam. So Rabbah says you can take 2 piles of salt and put a crossbeam on top of that, and that would be a kosher korah. Shamelach ma'amedes is hakorah, v'hakorah ma'amedes is hamelach, because the salt will support the beam, and the beam will apply pressure to the salt and keep it sturdy as well. So if that's the case, that putting a beam on top of it keeps it sturdy, keeps the salt sturdy. Afilu melach is troknis. Even table salt you could use. So long as there is a beam on top of this salt wall, so it will keep it sturdy. But if I guess at least until it rains. But if there's no beam, well then it won't be sturdy, and that's even table salt. So the Mishnah had said that the mill you keep 3 tfachim from like the bottom millstone, which is 4 tfachim from the top millstone, which is smaller. My time I'll call mishum tiraya, because of the vibrations of the millstone. I guess a millstone, I'm not a miller, but when a millstone mills, I guess it makes vibrations, and that could be bad for the wall. V'atani v'shel chomer shlosha mina istrubil she'ein arba mina keles hasamai tiraya ika. But we learn in a brisa that a donkey, they would be like a different kind of mill that would be milled by like a donkey, and that I guess was less noisy, for whatever reason. So that was less vibrationy for whatever reason. So ika ella mishum kala, rather, but there would be noise. There would still be noise, and the noise I guess could be bad for the wall, I guess. In the oven, you have to keep 3 tefachim away from sort of the bottom wider part, which is 4 tefachim away from the upper thinner part. So Rabbi says that we see that, I guess, from the widest part to the less wide part of the oven is a tefach, and the nafkamina would be, if you're buying an oven, like this is the dimensions you can assume, I guess. Chevre, we get up to the next Mishnah. Lo yamid adam toner besoch haboyis elo im kain yesh al gabov gova arba amas. Chevre, we've seen this a few times already, at least twice. BavaKama samach aleph mebez, Bava Metzia kuf yud ches mebez. And now here in BavaBasra, so I guess in all 3 sections of Masechta Nizikin, right? BavaKama, Bava Metzia, and BavaBasra, we mentioned this Mishnah, but this is the source. Lo yamid adam taner b'soch haboyis. So a person, if he wants to have an oven in his house, el imken yesh al gabav gova arba amis. Well, you have to make sure that there's 4 amis above the oven, between the oven and the roof. Right? Because it's a fire hazard. And a fire hazard doesn't only affect him, it affects the neighbors too. So therefore, if a person is going to have an oven in his house, there must be 4 amis between the top of the of space between the oven and the ceiling. I think we just read that. And if the oven was on, in like a loft on a second level, right? And I guess maybe the assumption is that the bottom level, the bottom floor, I guess, was maybe earth, was just, land, ground. So maybe there was no concern of like, the earth catching on fire. But if you're putting the oven on a second floor, so there's just like a second floor, like you can be putting an oven directly on the floor. Well then, in addition to having 4 amis above the oven, so there have to be 3 tefachim of like pitch, something that would make block the heat from reaching the floor in a significant way. With a kira tefach, and we're talking about a stove which wasn't as hot as a oven. tefach. So there have to be a tefach of, separation of like pitch or whatever beneath it. V'mhizik. Now, what if even though we took these precautions, a fire broke out? So does he say, look, I took all the precautions, I'm off the hook? Or is it no? You have to at the very least take these precautions because, if you don't take the precautions, then that's just is irresponsible. By taking the precautions, so you're being responsible, but that's not foolproof. It doesn't mean that a fire won't break out. You still have to make sure that a fire doesn't break out, but these are sort of the minimum safety requirements, but that doesn't mean that a fire can't break out, and if it does break out, you're still going to be chayav, but you still at least have to do this. So according to Tanakama, look, these are the things that you have to do to be responsible, but that's not to say that if you cause a fire and, it burns down neighboring houses and things, you're still going to have to pay. You still have to take these precautions. You have to be responsible, but just because you're being responsible doesn't make you off the hook. Rabbi Shimon says no. The point of these guidelines are that if you follow these guidelines, then you have nothing to worry about. If anything happens, as long as you follow the guidelines, nobody can hold anything against you. These are the safety guidelines. If you follow the safety guidelines, you're off the hook. You did what you were supposed to do as far as Reb Shimon is concerned. If you have 2 floors of a house, of a building, Shimon is on the bottom floor, Reuven's on the top floor. So Shimon should not open up a bakery or a dye shop in his first floor apartment. If Reuven is storing grain and olives and things on the second floor, because the smoke will ruin what Reuven is storing. V'lo refes baker, nor can you have a cow shed on the first floor. Be'emes b'yayin itiru avalo refes baker. They say though that by in terms of the dye shop and the bakery where there's a lot of smoke, the smoke will actually be okay for the wine, but the cow shed, however, that smell would be negative, have a negative impact on the wine. Says the Gemara, V'atanya b'taner arba'a uv'chira shlosha. Our Mishnah had said that by a oven, you have to have 3 tvachim. If it's on the second floor, you have to have 3 tvachim beneath the oven, and by a stove, 1 tefach beneath. But we have a brayso where it says by an oven, it's 4 tvachim, and by a stove, it's 3 tvachim. Rabbi Kitanyahi b'dinach tomen. Whereas Abai says, yeah, but that's talking about a baker's oven that is lit all of the time and is super hot, is consistently hot. So you need to take more precautions and have more of a buffer, and therefore oven for their ovens would require 4 tvachim and their stoves 3 tvachim. But regular people ovens would be 3 tvachim for the oven and 1 tefach for the stove. Titaner didon kikir dinachtomen, because our ovens are like the stoves of the bakers, right? The baker's stove is 3 tvachim, and of buffer, and our ovens, regular people's ovens, are 3 tvachim as well, but the baker's oven would be 4 tvachim. Fine. Where are we? Fine. Lo yiftach chanus v'chulei tane imoisa refes kodemis lo'otzer mutter. Now, if Shimon already had his cow shed on the first floor before Reuven decided to open up a storage on the second floor, well then Shimon can keep his cow shed there. Abaye asks, Kibed v'ribates le'otzer ma'u. What if Reuven on his roof started cleaning it up and started making preparations to make it a storage facility, but he wasn't actually storing anything yet, and then Shimon puts in, opens up a cow shed. So Reuven had already started the process of making a storage area, but he didn't actually have a full-fledged one yet. And Shimon then put in his, started making a cow shed before Reuven finished making it a storage area. Then what happens? Riba bachlonis ma. What if Reuven had installed a whole bunch of windows, into the second floor, so that there could be a lot of circulation, which is what is necessary for a storage area. But again, he wasn't actually storing stuff yet. Skip the next thing. Bana aliyah al gabe beso. What if he built I think it's a roof, on top of his, what is it? Al gago, on his roof. Put another level on his roof. Okay. So I guess he built some kind of a structure on his roof that would be what you would build if you were planning to build a storage house. But again, he wasn't storing anything at the time that Shimon made his cowshed. Mao, what's the halacha? Teku, we say, ich weiß nicht. Boy, Ravuna, Brady of Yeshua asks, Tamar Vrimoni Mao, what if he's storing dates and pomegranates? Normally when we talk about storing, we're talking about wheat and olives. Teku, we say, ich weiß nicht. Bemes biyayin itiru v'chule, we said, but the truth is that with wine, it would be okay for Shimon to have a dye shop or a bakery because the smoke would be fine for the wine. Tana biyayin itiru m'pnei shemash bicho. That by wine it would be permitted because the smoke would be good for the wine. V'lo refes baker but not a cowshed m'pnei shemasricho because it would make the wine disgusting. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, I did on our wine, I feel kutra the shraga nami kashale. Our wine is so sensitive that even just the smoke from just a regular old flame would negatively impact the wine. It's so sensitive. And aspasta, I think it's like growing some kind of like fodder, some kind of like animal feed. I guess I don't know what, it's like smelly and everything. Yeah, I guess it smells pretty bad. And therefore that would also not be allowed. That was daf chaf, Masechta BavaBasra. Wow. Actually, how long was that daf? Not that long, I don't think. Anyways, parts of it moved, parts of it went slowly. It was like shtickle tumatara for a whole chunk of it. Shmuel's interesting opinion about, right, that if something is movable, then it can't be chotzeitz b'fnei atumah. That was interesting. And then we got to that Mishnah at the end there about the precautions you have to make around having an oven inside one's house. Machlokas Tanakama and Reb Shimon about what if even after taking the precautions a fire breaks out. The Tanakama would say, even though you follow the precautions, that doesn't make you free of, that's not a free ticket. You're still going to be chayav. You just still also have to be responsible. Whereas Reb Shimon says, no, if you took the necessary precautions, well, you're off the hook. You did what you were meant to do. Peace out.